being your own leader, right? I think a lot of us are very used to seeking a roadmap from a teacher or, from a director or from someone who's farther along and has the career that we'd like.
Hey, I'm Lara, an artist, educator, and entrepreneur who's danced through life in Australia, London, and California. Now I'm an Aussie in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Juggling roles as an artist, ex-dancer, current actor, author, professional educator, and qualified life coach, I'm also a wife and mother of two. Join me on this podcast crafted for creative souls at every level, entrepreneurs, artists, dreamers, and hope-filled humans alike. I'm here to guide you towards a life of love, purpose, adventure, and boundless creativity. As a healthy, wealthy, and wise creative soul, I invite you to hit subscribe for weekly inspiration. Anticipate solo episodes, exclusive interviews with creative luminaries, and insightful discussions with my hottie hubby Andrew, a specialist performance physical therapist, as we delve into the dynamics of relationships and more. Dive into a 360-degree view of making a creative life you'll love. Hey there, artists and creatives. Today's episode is packed with value for anyone looking to break into new storytelling formats or grow their creative career. I'm thrilled to be joined by Alison Haselden, an actor, writer, and marketing strategist who just launched Wicked Dames, a 10-episode audio drama that's streaming now. Think Peaky Blinders meets Little Women. It's an immersive historical thriller set in 1942 Berlin. But what makes this conversation so important for you? Alison has been in the entertainment industry for over 20 years, and she brings that wealth of experience to the table, combined with a deep understanding of marketing for creatives. Whether you're an actor, writer, visual artist, or performer, you'll get actionable tips on everything from breaking into audio dramas to marketing your work in ways that actually matter. In this episode, we'll be talking about how to bring creative innovation to your projects, manage the business side of your career, navigate the challenges in the entertainment industry, and stay resilient through the highs and lows of the creative process. Alison will be sharing insights from her work on Wicked Dames and beyond. So stick around, because if you want to level up your creative career, this episode is packed with tips you can't afford to miss. Well, first of all, Alison, I'm so excited to talk to you. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm so happy to be here.
We were just having a little chat offline about your incredible history.
Yes.
And all of the different members of your family from, England, really. So that helps me kind of lead in with Wicked Dames. Congratulations on your new audio story format podcast, which is...
Yes.
So unique, and it's the first time you've done that, and it's set in a really dramatic period of history. So what drew you to the audio drama format for this project?
Yes, thank you so much. It's been a whirlwind. So I actually have to give credit for the audio drama idea to my friend Chad Darnell. He was really a huge mentor to me when I was writing the script for Wicked Dames, especially the pilot. And I had this script and I didn't really know what I was going to do with it. I felt very convicted to work on the story and to continue to build it out. I didn't just want to leave it as a pilot episode. But I knew that, period pieces are quite difficult to do on indie budgets. So I wasn't feeling confident enough to try to just pitch the pilot to try to get investors. And I also wasn't feeling up to the task, or that I could, with the budget that I could realistically raise on my own, be able to do the story justice. So I was having this whole chat with my friend Chad, and he was the one who said, well, what about an audio drama? What do you think about a teleplay? And it was a new idea to me. I'd heard of them, of course, before, but it wasn't really front of mind. And that led me down the rabbit hole of research. And eventually, I kind of sat on it for about a year after he suggested it. But then it just felt like the right thing to do. So we put on all the hats and learned a lot of new things and figured it out.
There's a huge cast. I'm going to get you to talk about that in a little bit, but I mean, I just looking on your website, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many people involved. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it takes courage, doesn't it, to really step out and put yourself out there in the producing role. And I love that, because I think that that's really where the future's at for a lot of us at the moment, which I'll come
Yes.
back to. But audio dramas are gaining popularity. I like to say, in inverted commas, again, because some countries like England, they've had radio drama for
Right.
years, and I've worked in that. So it's interesting though, because I'm not sure about the American and Australian. I haven't really seen that as much here, but they're still relatively niche compared to the film and TV market, and your backgrounds in marketing and acting. What were some of the creative challenges that you faced in developing Wicked Dames, and how did you approach turning those into opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I definitely am very grateful that I had my 20 years of experience in the
Mm.
industry previously, as well as that marketing experience that I have from my day job. Those two factors, I just know from my internal side and my processing of all the different choices I had on my plate, certainly helped me feel a little bit more confident. Um, Especially because there were a lot of elements of this that were brand new to me. And then I just felt I was so convicted with this story. I truly feel like I am the steward of this story. I feel a
Yeah.
big responsibility to take a good care of this story. So I think that those two things were really helpful um, in keeping my own confidence up, and helping me lead with curiosity. That's kind of
Mm.
my tagline for pretty much everything I do. I like to joke that I have a multi-hyphenate charm bracelet at this point, and every year I add something new to it. And I think a big part of that is because I just am I'm so curious. I'm so excited to learn new skills. And I really feel that kind of drive is what's going to be the most beneficial to my career, and has been thus
Mm.
far, because I look at every challenge as an opportunity, and I'm excited to learn about it, even if there's some of the parts of this process where I figured it out, I learned how to do it, and in the future I really, really hope I can hire someone else to do it for me. I learned that's probably not going to be my area of expertise, but that's okay. So I kind of moved through the whole process with that mindset, and I think that
Mm.
was really helpful. Um, it was, I think, just the most daunting. Like you mentioned, I had a lot of. It's a big show. It's quite a
Yeah.
layered cast. There's a lot going on, and I was very nervous about being able to find actors who were willing to do it on a very, very small indie
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
Um, so, and do the dialects. A lot of my actors are US based. So
Mm.
I was very nervous about that. But we struck gold. We got so lucky that people were willing to play and have fun. So that was probably the most nerve wracking. And then I was very fortunate to be able to outsource the editing.
Mm.
That was the one thing I knew I was not going to take the time to learn how to do on my own, because that would take far too long.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it was just that, like I said, kind of. I felt really confident in making those choices of, okay, what am I going to tackle myself? What am I going to outsource? And that definitely helped with some of the stress of the
Mm.
learning curve.
What do you think the heart is within you as the artist that you are, that kind of goes, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone, try something completely new, learn some new skills, lead with curiosity. But it's not the traditional sort of, I'm going to go for a self-tape and book an acting role.
Yeah.
What just sort of was the seed of this new thing that you did with so much gusto?
You know, it is kind of difficult to pinpoint that. I think, my whole life I have been an actor since I was 6 years old.
Hmm.
Took a few years off. But, if you ask my mother, she'll tell you my whole life she's been waiting for me to realize I'm a showrunner.
Oh,
Um,
that's
yeah,
funny.
so she knew before I did. And I
Mm,
think it was kind of a perfect storm, right?
yeah.
I had been on set a few times
Mm,
leading up to and during the process of me writing Wicked Dames, which took
yeah.
me about a year because I wrote the 10 episode scripted version as well as the novel version. I
Mm,
took about a year to do that. And the idea, honestly, I was not looking to write anything. I wasn't seeking out this project. It kind of just downloaded into my mind one
Mm.
day, and I couldn't ignore it and I couldn't shake it. And simultaneously, I was experiencing just like an interesting shift when I was on set and when I was auditioning. After 20 years, I
Mm.
started to realize that I was so comfortable in that environment. I was so
Mm.
comfortable in my job as an actor. My brain constantly was looking at the broader picture of how are the directors interacting? Oh, that first AD isn't doing what he should be doing. Why is this like? I was looking at all
Mm.
the things that a
Yeah.
showrunner would, and I would be talking to other actors, and they weren't noticing these things, right? Um, so that was kind of happening. I suddenly had this story I felt compelled to write every single day for a year. Um, and then at the same time in my marketing job as well, I was being put in more positions and getting more requests from clients to direct creative content for branded commercial style projects, which I
Mm.
have had history in that before, but it just all kind of started compounding at the same time. Um, and then I realized how much I felt like that was where I was finding my stride. I still, of course, love acting. Like I love being on set just as an actor, but it's been a really interesting thing for me to kind of discover, oh, this is the pocket I feel the
Wow.
most confident and comfortable, and like things just flow, I think, which has been a really lovely discovery for me.
Are you loving the creative autonomy that you get to have in
Yes.
this compared to kind of waiting for someone's yes, like going, well, I'm going to be the person that says yes? What's that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've always been that way. I have
Mm.
never, my whole life, and I do credit my parents for this. I've never waited to be chosen my whole life. Um, I I think starting as a kid as well taught me um, to handle rejection in
Mm.
a through a lens that doesn't feel quite as personal. And then on top of that, my parents were always very supportive of me making things happen for myself.
Mm.
And this, I think, it really is the culmination of that. And I honestly do believe that if I didn't have this project the past 2 years, it would have been much more difficult navigating the strike and
Yeah.
all of the challenges that we face as an industry.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime that those things were happening around me, I just felt like I was fine because I had Wicked Dames to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I was so excited to work on it and to collaborate with everyone. So that was really, I'd heard people say that for years. And this was the first time I really, really felt confirmation in that when you have your own
Mm.
project that you truly feel aligned in,
Yeah.
it can help you stay grounded and stay focused
Oh,
and not be so bothered
absolutely.
by all the outside noise.
Yeah, absolutely. What about creatives that, listening who are interested in exploring new storytelling formats like audio dramas or podcasts or whatever it might be for their pivot? What advice would you give them about getting started, especially when it comes to standing out in such a crowded field?
Yes. So I think the number one thing that I would tell folks to keep in mind is don't think that you have to do all of the jobs yourself. Um,
Mm.
I do, but I am so fully aware that I'm the exception to that rule. And I think from some folks that I've talked to, that has been a huge barrier for them to get started is they're like, well, it feels like pulling teeth trying to write, or
Mm.
oh, like I'm a good actor, but directing other actors is really stressful for me. And then they'll just see all of those red flags and not take the first step. So
Mm.
I would recommend figuring out what of the additional hats, because you're going to probably have to have more than, just actor.
Absolutely.
Pick one that feels interesting to
Yeah.
you, that doesn't feel quite as scary, and that you would like to genuinely learn about. And you
Mm.
pick that to be your additional one thing. Then go out and try to find folks that you trust that feel very aligned and are as equally excited about the project to
Mm.
collaborate with those other hats. Because I just think, I absolutely am such a huge proponent of actors creating their own content. However, I
Mm.
think it's also so important to stay aligned with where your creative energy works best, right?
Mm.
Otherwise, you
Mm.
might be making more stress for yourself than benefit.
Yeah.
So do try to find that balance and don't rush. Like I said, a lot of the skills that helped me with this project, I've been developing for between 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, that's
And
true. Yeah.
I didn't know, I didn't know at the time that my marketing skills or some of my experiences as an actor were going to help me with this project.
Mm-hmm.
So until I was doing it, and I was like, wow, I'm so grateful for this experience or for that. So yeah, don't rush. Pick skills that you're genuinely interested in learning and find really good collaborators. And with collaborators, definitely ask a lot of questions, more questions than you think you need to before you choose to sign on with them.
That's really good advice because it can really make or break a project. I've seen
Yes.
so many fights. I mean, we all have,
Yeah.
because of how strong often people's visions are and how attached emotionally we are
Right. Right.
to
And
our work.
sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's so easy too to just, I think for a lot of us actors to be like, oh, someone wants to work with me. Like
Mm-hmm.
they like my idea. Oh, great, great, great. Yes, of course. And they
Yeah.
think that's all they need. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, initial enthusiasm is great, but that doesn't always make for a
Mm-hmm.
good match for a longer term
That's
creative
so
partner.
true, and a lot of us, particularly if we come from like me, my background in musical theatre and that auditioning
Right.
style, you kind of think sometimes project onto others like, yes, I'll take you into my project because
Right.
you want to be accepted into other people's
Yes,
projects, but it doesn't always
exactly.
serve the work, does it? So
Right.
that's a
Right.
great thing. You said about marketing and your other hats, but you've built a really strong reputation, not only as a creative, but also as a marketing strategist. And I've watched that over the years, different things that you've done there. How do you balance the creative and business sides of your career, both in the context of this project, but also just in general?
Yeah, I do think, I am really someone I'm very fascinated by psychology and
Mm,
learning styles and energy styles. And I think I do have a big part of that is that I'm very fortunate just with what I was put onto this earth with, biologically, genetically, energetically, to where I do kind of have a pretty even left and right brain
mm.
function, which is I'm so hyper aware
So
of that.
good.
I'm so
You
grateful.
need both.
Yeah.
I really believe that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm so grateful that that kinda
Yeah.
comes naturally, that toggle. But yeah, I think I'm very fortunate at this point. I did my first 8 or so years in marketing, working at marketing agencies and in-house companies, and learned a lot of my skills there. And then in the past 2 years, I've struck out on my own, and I'm able to take on projects that I want to take on and clients that I
Mm.
want to take on now. And that has been really, really crucial to me being able to um, conserve my creative energy for my
Yeah.
own projects. I found it much more difficult. When I had less say about those things, I would find myself giving a lot of that creative energy to my clients and then
Mm.
feeling depleted when it came to my own
Yeah.
projects. So, obviously, again, that's something that took time for me to be able to make that transition, but that has really helped because it's kind of I lead everything with my intuition now. So I won't take on a client if I don't feel like they're the right fit for me or if I'm the right fit for them. There's
Mm.
certain types of marketing work that I myself won't do, and I'll outsource to others for my clients because I just know it drains my creative energy. Like I won't do long form writing projects anymore for
Mm.
marketing because I need to have that long form writing for my own writing projects.
That's so cool.
So things
Mm.
like that. So finding those, and it's little tiny pieces, but they all kind of add up to create that balance.
Mm.
Um, and I did that with Wicked Dames too. I had blocks of time, whether that was weeks or months, even where I was putting on one hat or the other.
Mm.
There were parts of the process I was just had my director hat on, parts of the process where I just had my marketer hat on, and I think that really helped me with being able to stay present on the task at hand and not feeling too
Mm.
muddled with all the different things going on.
Have you found people kind of look at your casting type and underestimate you?
Mm, that's an interesting question. Um, I think a lot of people, if they're just seeing my face, are sometimes surprised when they see my energy. My whole life, though, I mean, every acting coach I've ever had, it has just said you need to wait until you can play 30s and 40s, because my inner world is a lot older, I think, than my external shell. I still play teenagers, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think in that regard, I can be confusing to some people for sure.
Mm.
Um, but again, I'm it's just another reason I'm excited to age. I'm
I
I'm
love that.
I'm so excited to age into my
Casting.
prime typecast, and in the meantime, I'll just get to make my whole portfolio of writing projects, so we'll be ready to go.
Yes. And I just love like these older grandmas that we saw in Downton Abbey. Unfortunately,
Yes.
lost
Oh,
Maggie recently, and Judi Dench, and like these kind of
yes.
people. I'm like, look, you can go forever.
Oh my, exactly, exactly. Oh my God. Maggie was such an inspiration to me. I
Mm.
literally, when she passed, I was in the middle of an audition, and my
Oh.
partner was taping me, and he had seen it on his phone, and he had to wait until I was done before he told me.
Mm.
He was like, "Okay, you did great on your audition. I have to tell you some bad news." And I just started sobbing. It was terrible.
And she worked
But
till nearly
yeah,
90 years
she
old.
and
Amazing.
was delivering iconic performances until the end. So yeah,
Yeah.
those ladies are so inspiring to me.
So inspiring. I agree. What would you say to aspiring artists to keep in mind when it comes to marketing their work
Hmm.
effectively?
Yeah. I think things are changing a lot. Things change every year with marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to be changing even more. We're in kind of an interesting hinge
Yeah.
point, especially with the entertainment industry. And I think we're going to
Mm.
see that reflected in marketing as well. One of the things that I'm telling my clients right now is to not worry so much about keeping up with the marketing
Mm.
hamster wheel, and try to think a little bit more about kind of like I was saying before, like where is your energy
Mm.
needed? I'm even doing this myself. I'll be taking a few months off of social media once Dames is fully out, so that I can kind of go inward and work on my next creative projects,
I
and then
love
kind of
that.
pop back online
Yeah.
when I have something that I want to share.
Mm.
So I think, and I think that especially social media, but also more evergreen styles of marketing, like for your website,
Mm.
blogging, YouTube, things like that, are going to be very conducive to that as well.
Mm.
So thinking of it more really as a tool, of take your creative time when you need it. If you're not feeling led to do any marketing efforts, great. Lean
Mm.
into that. Lean into what you need. And then when it's time to share with the world something that you've worked on, or a message that you have to share, or whatever it is, whether it's a big project like this, or it's just a one scene that you've been working on, then you can pop back on and really then think very strategically about how you want to show up.
Mm.
But I think things are changing. It's not going to be an everyday necessity, I don't think, for artists moving forward, which I think will be a really good thing for the art side of things.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. That it won't be an everyday necessity. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think so. Marketing right now has been a little volatile between just world events, as well as from like a psychological standpoint. Many
Mm.
communities, many demographics are kind of collectively burnt out
Yeah.
with media, especially short form media on
Mm.
social media and things like that. Um, and so our attention spans, which were already quite small, our capacity is now quite small, in
Yeah.
addition to the attention spans to
So
consume
true.
and actually process information.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see, much like the entertainment industry, a shift into quality over quantity. I think we're
Yeah.
starting to see that happen, just because, I mean, for different reasons, obviously, uh, with each group. But I think that's kind of where we're headed. And I think that's going to be a really, really restorative thing for all of us.
Yeah.
I just think from an emotional perspective, mental and just like bandwidth,
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
going to be a good thing. So yeah, if you've been pressuring yourself to post every
Mm.
day, I'm giving you permission not to.
I love that you said that. I actually just want to draw out that the wonderful thing you said, that how you personally take that time off from posting to go into that creative space, and you've recognized the different hats and how much time it takes to create good content and build your audience versus I actually need to take that hat off. I love that you
Yes.
said that.
Yeah.
When did you work
It's
that out?
oh my goodness. It's I it's been about like the past, I would say 2 to 3 years. I've
Mm,
really been trying to zero in on that. I've been exploring kind of what that looks like for me. And
mm,
then in the last year in particular, um, I really settled into, I think, being able to listen to my intuition about
mm.
when those switches are going to happen. Because it really isn't, it's not always something you can kind of plan out on a calendar. Um, Obviously, sometimes like I do have, I knew when Wicked Dames was releasing and I knew when it was ending. So I did start very intentionally posting 2, 3 months before the launch date, right?
Mm.
So there was some marketing strategy there.
Yeah.
Um, but then I felt very, very clearly, literally around the time when we launched in the beginning of September, I was like, I'm going to be taking off November, December, and January.
Wow.
And I hadn't planned for that. So when I was originally making the marketing plan, I was going to be promoting all the way through November as well. And I was like, nope, we're not doing that now. And I'm sticking with that gut feeling on that.
Mm.
And we'll go from there. So I think it's just, I'm constantly checking in with my priorities, right? I do have a lot of different projects and things I'm juggling.
Mm.
So um, I used to be someone who wanted to pick one thing, see it through to the end
Yeah.
before moving on to the next. And I've recently shifted that to being okay with having a few things going at once
Yeah.
so that I can kind of tune into those different hats. I'm like, what mode am I in today? Am
That's
I,
good.
in a creative writing mode where I just want to get all the ideas out? Am
Mm.
I in a more meticulous editing mode, or am I feeling really good with numbers and admin and strategy? I kind of will check in with myself each day on that and then look at my list of things to do and pick from the category.
I love that because it's true.
Yeah.
Like, and I really relate in terms of the multifaceted part. I've always produced. I've always, whether it's directing or choreographing or performing in musical theatre or straight acting. Now that I've moved to Atlanta in the last couple of years, like or educating.
Right.
There's a lot of hats, and I think there used to be a thing where people like you have to pick one lane and stay in it, which is not
Oh
really
yeah.
where it is anymore. And I think that's doing
No.
yourself a disservice, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember when I was a kid, that was the mantra. If
Hmm.
you did anything besides acting, oh, you don't care about your acting career. And
Yeah.
that's just not realistic with
I
how
wonder
the
who
way things are
started
now.
that lie, because it is a lie, because all of that stuff in your life has led you to this incredible project,
Yeah,
the skill
absolutely.
set,
Yep.
really.
It's all connected.
It is all connected. Many creatives actually feel so overwhelmed, and I'm glad you spoke about that, about the business side, the marketing side of their careers. What's one thing they should focus on right now to gain that momentum without sacrificing their creativity or burning out, as you spoke about, what you do? Do you think everyone can do that?
Hmm. I think um sorry, could you rephrase that question?
Yeah.
I
Do
want to
you
make sure
think
I'm answering your question.
Yeah, do you think everybody can switch offline and maybe focus on their creative mode, being more aware? Is that really what your
Mm,
advice would be to other creatives? Or do you think some people need to focus on building their audience? We go in this funny loop, don't we, as artists? Because,
yeah.
I'm writing too, and they're like, you've got to build your audience in order to have an audience to sell the book, but then you want to write the book,
Mhm.
and that's a creative part, and it's that this vicious cycle that we're
Yeah,
in. Speak into that space. Like, how do we manage that? How do you think others
right.
should manage that?
Yeah, I think, there's not one right way. I
Mm,
do think it goes back to that. I think the more I have learned about how my brain works, right, and how
yeah.
my energy works, that has helped inform and really strengthen my intuition in creating a plan that works for me.
Mm,
And every single person has their own blueprint for that. And I do think it's a combination between how your brain works and how your heart and like your energy works.
mm,
And that combination is going to be different for everyone. So I
yeah.
do think there are some people who have an easier time balancing. Um, and I think there's other people who need to kind of do hard shifts and
Mm,
block time off. So, that's kind of been honestly my biggest thing with this journey, especially in the past few years, is like I've been in addition to working on my creative projects, I've been working really, really hard on my personal growth and just like being
Mm.
more familiar with myself. And that's helped everything. So I think it's just about that, like getting comfortable with, in that way, being your own leader, right? I think a lot of us are very used to seeking a roadmap from a teacher or
Mm.
from a director or from someone who's farther along and has the career that we'd like. And when it comes to this piece of it, it is so genuinely unique
Mm.
that my blueprint will not work for most other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I just think that's a really tricky thing, again, for actors in particular, to give themselves permission to lead themselves in that and to say, oh, I
Mm.
actually do know what's best for me when it comes to how I work best, how I create best, how I rest best, and what that magic combination is.
Mm.
Um, so, yeah, I would say like get brave and get curious and
Yeah.
experiment with what schedules and processes feel right in your body. And if it
Mm.
doesn't work, you can always change it, right? I've gone
That's
through
true.
so many iterations. I've gone through
Yeah.
so many iterations and different seasons. I need different things. But the more in tune I am with my energy and my body, I think typically the happier and more in my creative flow I tend to be.
Yeah, and I've seen in your last few years quite a transition actually out of wearing one business hat with a business partner and then going into a more creative space again. Was that intentional or just a natural sort of ebb and flow there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, very intentional. I think it's been really interesting, kind of like I mentioned earlier, I feel like I have this natural curiosity and I have picked up a lot of skills over my life.
Mm.
And one of my biggest things I've learned through some of these minor projects that I've worked on over the past 6 years or so is really learning the importance of the difference between knowing what I can do and what I should be doing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that I've done, I learned a great deal from them, but it came down to, oh, just because I can do this, but is it really aligned for me? Is it
Mm.
really, an environment I want to be in for a long period of time? Does it light me up or
Mm.
is it draining me? And so that has been a really cool thing. And I feel like while I've learned a lot of things from all those experiences, a lot of those things were not things I should have been doing. It was just things I could do.
Yeah.
Um, and since I've shifted more into the format that I'm operating under now, I'm definitely much more happy. I'm much more relaxed.
Mm.
And I definitely the creative floodgates opened once I
I
kind of
love
got
that so
this format
much, and
in
I
place.
see that. I see that in your
Yeah.
life. Yeah, I actually, it's funny because I'm quite intuitive like that, but like watching that journey for you, I'm like, I can see what's going on there, and I love it. Like I could see
Oh,
this
thank
light.
you.
But it's amazing because that happens to so many creatives. Hence why I wanted
Yeah.
to lean into it for a sec, because so many of us get distracted with what we could do, but rather than what's lighting us up.
Right.
Including social media sometimes, that
Yes,
kind of comes into that space. But let's just circle back to Wicked Dames. You had such a super large cast,
we
and
did.
it's
Yes.
complex storytelling, and it involves significant risk, obviously, going into those spaces creatively. How do you approach managing creative risks in your career, both, looking at the money and the finance and people's expectations, but also just creatively honoring a project?
Yeah. I was definitely nervous when
Mm.
this particular time period of World War II
Yeah,
and the stories,
exactly
they
right.
all
Yeah.
they fell into my lap and I was like, "Really? Like really, universe? Is this the one?"
Yeah.
Just because, I've always loved history.
Mm.
I think, growing up in school, like history was the closest thing to like storytelling that
Mm.
we got to learn about. And so I've always liked it, but I'm by no means like a historian. I didn't go to
Yeah.
university for history or anything like that. So I was a little nervous about um, just the historical accuracy, and it's a very intense time. There's a lot of different topics that are quite sensitive that I touch on in the story. Um, and I think one of the things for me that helped me kind of feel a little bit of more brave, was I chose to look at it as fantasy. And I do think sometimes historical fiction and fantasy are quite close, right? So the history was the foundation for me. And I did, of course, do some research on some of the details of the world that I wanted to make sure were period accurate.
Yeah.
But when it came to some of the other elements, I gave myself permission to view it as fantasy. And that really, really helped with feeling less nervous on the story front. And then with everything else, I think kind of like I said before, this is the first time genuinely in my life that I have felt so like a conviction for a story, for a project, that I had a responsibility to see it through. And that was a really interesting experience for me, because I've heard, showrunners and filmmakers talk about that in the past, and I didn't quite relate to it until
Yeah.
now. But I think anytime I got nervous, or anytime I, saw a budget that I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to figure that out, it wasn't even like a choice. I was like, I just have to figure it out.
You
Or
have to,
I
yeah.
have to, at a certain point, make a choice and be brave and see what happens. And I think there's something, I think a big part of that, again, goes back to all the personal growth work I've been doing the past few years. I really felt like this was for me and it was for my characters. And if I am doing right by them, then I'm good. I think I've been fortunate too. I don't really get very, very nervous about public opinion. Thankfully, I think my work in marketing and just being an actor for so long has helped with that. But yeah, it was just kind of that magical little combination of things. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's not very helpful.
No, it actually really is. I mean, the entertainment industry, the arts industry, whatever, whether it's writing or whatever, it doesn't necessarily have to be what we know as entertainment industry. I mean, you've got a lot of experience with different hats in acting, marketing, and now writing, but there's a lot of periods of uncertainty. And so what advice would you give to other creatives about staying resilient in tough times? Because there's been a lot of tough times, and
Yeah.
you've been through quite a few years of personal growth which have affected your creativity. What advice would you say about navigating that?
Yeah. I would say, for me at least, if I'm feeling uncertain, I go inward first. I do not engage with other artists actually at all, which is kind of opposite advice that I think a lot of people will give you, especially to newer artists. I find that, especially in the last few years, I've kind of my circle's gotten a lot smaller within the entertainment industry. And that has been incredibly beneficial. I go inward first by myself. I meditate. I ground myself, and I remind myself of my priorities just in life, what I'm here to, who I am, what I'm here to do, and how I want to show up in the world every single day. And I remind myself of that, because at the end of the day, if those things still feel aligned, then I know, even if I'm in a place where I'm nervous about the future, or I'm feeling down or disappointed, if those things still feel aligned for me and those priorities, then that's my sign I need a rest. I don't need to quit. And then after I do that, if I still feel like I need some support, I'll reach out to one or two very specific individuals who I think would be able to give me the support I need based on what's going on. But I find, just quiet, peace, rest, like as much of a peaceful environment I can create around myself, which typically means less people for me because I'm a bit of an introvert, the better. And then typically after a good sleep and a bath, and maybe a walk around the neighborhood, I feel a lot better after that typically.
It's true. Like what sunlight can do is quite remarkable.
Yes.
And fresh air in terms of regulating our nervous system. And I think we are out of touch with that, aren't we, as human beings?
Definitely.
So it really does help. I mean, let's talk about for a minute adapting to the changing industry, because this project, Wicked Dames, has come at the best time, whether you foresaw that or not. It really was timed quite remarkably in terms of when you're in alignment. It's amazing how that happens, right? But it's gone through a lot of changes recently around strikes and technology. And, I'm talking to all different artists, whether they're writers or visual artists or dancers, actors, singers. I mean, everybody's really going through some element of massive change.
Yeah.
How have you seen the industry shift in terms of opportunities for actors and other creatives before and after the strikes, before and after AI? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's I'm I've obviously seen the numbers that we've all been seeing. They've affected me personally, and I've seen it in my friends in the Atlanta market as well as in Los Angeles and New York, and then I've also seen some shifts with my friends who are in the UK as well, and seeing how things have changed over there. I I think, we're seeing the pendulum swing, right? When we go to extremes on any side for too long, we end up having a time of rebalancing and like a reset. And I think that's true for all industries and all situations. So, and history actually, shows us that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I think that's what we're experiencing, which is always really uncomfortable. Um, but I do think that for me at least, I really did see this, and kind of like we mentioned before, in my brain forever, I have had it in my mind that my big break will not come until I'm in my probably late 30s or 40s. So I think that has really helped me to view this time as a gift,
Yeah.
to build some of these other things that I want to have ready. Like that's kind of how I think of it. Like I'm always betting on myself, and there's absolutely nothing in the outside world that is going to mess with that. Like I know where I'm going. I know that my future is undeniable. I don't know how it's all the pieces are going to fall. Um, so when I see things like this, which we really have no control over, I try to find the gift in it. And for me, that has been the opportunity to invest in these writing and kind of directing skills, and build my portfolio. Because at some point, I know there's going to be a day that I'm going to have an amazing opportunity to connect with folks who might want to buy my scripts, and I plan to be ready. And I don't know if that's going to be in 2 years or in 10 years or when it's going to happen, but
Yeah.
that's kind of how I have settled into it. Obviously, like I wish I was auditioning more. I really enjoy auditioning. Um, but at the end of the day, I'm not. And I know that's, no one's fault but the
Yeah.
but the big bosses and the
Yeah.
cogs of the big machine.
Yeah.
So I think I was looking for the silver linings. I was looking for the gifts, and it's not going to last forever. I do think we are going to shift, like I said, into more quality over quantity. So for actors who started, you know, in the like 2017, 2018 years, that might feel scary and shocking to them. Luckily, I have lived through a few cycles
Yes.
of the industry. So that to me, I'm comfortable with, right? And I'm confident. Like I think that's part of it. I think we see people getting nervous, and I'm like, why are you nervous? Have you been training? Are you ready? Because I'm ready. Like I'm okay if the quantity goes
Yeah.
down. I feel confident. I'm ready to show up and do my best.
Yeah.
So whatever that is for you, for me, it's been investing in my writing. For others, maybe actors who are still, feel like they have a lot they want to work on with their training. Now's the time. Be ready and be
Yeah.
like, whether it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, but the pendulum's going to swing back in the other direction. And I think this is the time to get ready.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and I'm hearing what I actually just posted about this morning, audacious hope and belief in ourselves. And I really do see across working in London, Australia, and now here more recently, that's one of the characters an artist need, isn't it? It's not like, I don't believe we need to be delusional. I think we need to
Right.
believe in ourselves with
Right.
audacious hope that we
Yes.
can and will get to where we want to go because we have that self-belief, not in an arrogant way. And I'm hearing that in you,
Right.
which is so refreshing because
Oh, thank
you
you.
don't need to worry, do you, when you're multifaceted? You just, I remember sitting in theatre when things first happened and I went, well, AI can't replace that.
Yep. Yep.
It's like live experiences. That's always going to be what humans want with other humans. We don't want to do that in the
Absolutely.
same way with robots. So,
Right. Right.
right.
And I believe in that so wholeheartedly. Like we
Mm.
are gonna, of course we're gonna see new, like the world is always evolving and people are curious about new advances and new technology. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to like try to shut that down because I do think it is important
Mm.
to be innovative and curious. Obviously, we want to make sure we're doing so responsibly.
Yeah.
But I exactly what you said. Humans must have connection. Like
Yeah.
all of the psychology journals on that, like connection and belonging and acceptance. And
Yeah.
that is what we need to survive.
Yeah.
So I know that that will always be there.
Mm.
And I think that really adds to, like you said, that audacious hope of
Mm.
I know that there's always going to be people I can serve with my art and who
Yeah.
will want my art. And I also feel very very much, like I said, just this conviction that I have these skills, that I have these gifts, and whatever stage that is that I'm able to utilize them, however large or small or whatever
Mm.
country it's in, or whether it's online or in person, that's what I'm here to do, and I'm excited
Mm.
to participate in that and to uh, experience that. It's much for my audiences as it is for me,
Yeah.
and I think it's not an arrogance thing. It's just like
Mm.
I know that that's what we're here to do, right? Like that's our
Yeah.
purpose, and I'm so
Yeah.
excited. There's so much more to explore. There's
Really.
so much
Yeah.
more to create, and
Mm-hmm.
like I said at the beginning, like I've never needed permission to create. I've never needed permission
Mm.
to connect with people. Um,
Love
and
that.
so I think that, yeah,
Mm.
that's, if we're centered in that, then um, what can they do to us?
Yeah, I love that. And it's that saying of, do you want to make it or do you want to make? And I say make it
Right.
as in like inverted commas, make it in the
Right.
industry and whatever that is. Or do you want to just make? And some people, I think there was that saying I heard recently, some people want to look successful more than they want to be successful. And I
Yes.
question whether a lot of artists actually want to do the art or they just want to have the results and the accolades that come with.
Absolutely.
Have you seen
Right.
that in your life?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's why that's always been my biggest advice for every single artist in any,
Mm.
medium is do your personal work, go to therapy,
Mm.
go to
Yeah.
whatever spiritual practice that you need.
Mm.
Um, like learn about yourself, learn about how your brain works, heal those parts of yourself that
Yeah.
need healing.
Mm.
And because we all have them,
Yeah.
we all have them, especially artists.
Yeah.
And I think the artists who do that work tend to have more longevity
Yeah.
in their careers. They tend to have more peace throughout their careers.
True.
And
Mm.
if this life is not what's actually meant for them, they'll figure that out sooner
Mm-hmm.
and be able to get on the right path for them a lot sooner.
Mm.
So yeah, every time I see that a lot, and my heart goes out to anyone who I see in that position, like you said, of looking to make it rather than to make.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I always see the wounds, I can see it. I can see
We
there's something.
empathize. Yeah.
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 And everyone has their own path, to figuring that out. But
Mm.
that's always my number one piece of advice is
It's
whatever
true.
your route, go
Yeah.
do your inner work.
Yeah, and I'm sure you can relate, like looking back at previous versions of ourselves within that ambition and kind of going, oh, cringe.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But
Oh
also
my
being
gosh.
kind and going, hey, older self looking at younger self, you did the best you knew
Right.
how. It's okay. Like
Right.
it's a
Right. We're
journey.
all we're all doing our best with what we have at the moment.
Yeah. You
Absolutely.
only
But
know what
yeah.
you know when you know it. So
Oh yeah.
that's
I don't
right.
know a single artist who doesn't have like a cringy looking back in time moment.
Yep, especially on my socials. I'm like, oh, what was I thinking?
Oh yeah.
Can you tell me too, like, what's next for you now after Wicked Dames? Are there any upcoming projects or insights you're particularly excited to share about? Will you do more on this project?
Oh goodness. So Wicked Dames, I'm so thrilled that it's out in the world.
Mm,
And that it'll be evergreen on, Spotify
so
and
good. Yeah.
Apple and all the podcast streaming platforms. So I'm excited to see how it grows. I am going to hopefully revisit the novel manuscript version of Wicked Dames and possibly start querying that in 2025.
Yeah.
I'll probably take a little break, though. I'm actually working on 2 fantasy novels right now.
Nice.
Yeah, so I have a YA fantasy novel that I'll be probably working on this winter while I'm offline. And then a kind of more complex adult fantasy that will probably take me some time to work through. So working on those 2, hopefully just continuing to nurture Wicked Dames. And then I should have a film coming out in 2025 called Bridehard with Rebel Wilson, which should be a lot of fun. I'm very excited to see it.
I love her.
Yeah, she's great. She's awesome. My scene was with her, and
so
she
fun.
was a hoot. Yeah, so
I can't wait to see that. Yeah,
so fun. Yeah, I play a Scottish character in that, so
fun.
That will be very fun. But
that's great casting for you.
It worked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a lot of exciting things in the works. But I'm definitely looking forward to going into my cocoon and writing all winter long.
Yeah, I've been a little bit in a cocoon as a writer too. I signed with a New York literary agent. And I signed with my first acting agent in America on the first day of the strike. So that was a bit of a sad situation. And as you know, it hasn't recovered. But I went into the writing space as well, but more in my area of education and creativity coaching.
Wow.
But it's an interesting space and I love that. So I'm a big fan of multifaceted creativity and pivoting and never like letting the season we're in, crush us.
Right. Yes,
keep
absolutely.
going.
Absolutely. And it all really feeds each other.
Yeah.
It's, like I said, if you're genuinely interested in a adjacent outlet, I've felt absolutely like my acting has improved since I've started writing.
Exactly, yeah.
And my writing benefits from my acting.
So good.
So yeah, it's, whatever fuels you, I think is just such a beautiful thing. And
absolutely.
it's been a delight to explore and have fun with. Yeah,
exactly. So for listeners who want to find you, follow your journey. Obviously you'll be in a cocoon at some point, which I love. I love that you've said that. I'm tempted to do the same thing about marketing and your creative strategy. How can people find you with the different hats?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find everything on my website at AlisonHaselden.com. I have tabs for kind of all the different areas there. I am on all social media as at Alison_Haselden. So you can get all the info through those outlets. With my marketing clients right now, I am doing some audits, like one-off audits for individuals as well as businesses, but I mostly do retainer clients. So my clients typically are on with me for three months to a year plus. But just send an inquiry and I can kind of point in the right direction there.
So good, so good. And I wish you all the best with all of your rest season, your writing, your acting, your podcast, your Wicked Dames. It's just amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
As always, if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with fellow artists or creatives who could use some inspiration. We'll be back next week with another episode helping you unlock your creativity and thrive in your artistic journey. Bye for now, friends. Phew, today's masterclass is done. I love reaching back and saying, I've done this, and helping you learn the easy way. If you want more, head to larabiancapilcher.com for show notes, links, freebies, my blog, coaching and courses, and you can also head to my socials, Lara Bianca Pilcher on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also on Twitter and Pinterest. Thanks again for listening. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That would mean the world to me. And of course, keep on living the healthy, wealthy, wise artist living towards your dream life. Bye, friends. P.S. Shout out to my hottie hubby, Andrew Pilcher, who does all the editing on this podcast.